Welcome everybody to Salt of the Earth podcast. We have Paul Baker, Barker here, Mr. PB and Jelly.
Come on.
We're a pastor at Radiant Church here, and we're bringing along the podcast, explore his life, his testimony, what pastoring's like, and so on and so forth. So, Paul, welcome on.
Dude, thanks so much. It is an honor to be on here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, for sure. I'm super stoked.
Come on.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself. Bird's eye view,
Yep.
family, life, kids, work. What does that look like?
Okay, so I'm a pastor at the church, obviously. I am married to Gabby. We've been married coming up on 13 years, which is great. So June 30th is our anniversary. Yeah, thank you. So that's awesome. I have two kids, Eloise and Ellis. They're 9 and 7. And we live here in Kansas City. We've lived here for the last about 9 years. We moved here actually on our anniversary in 2016. So it's been almost 9 years now, so which is crazy. So we love Kansas City. We've lived here almost a decade now, and it's really become home in a lot of ways. And I think for us, Gabby works at a school. She's does marketing for actually our kids' school, and works there. And then I'm a pastor, and we've always done ministry together since we been married, and so she'll be at the church a lot with me. We'll be working on things. We were here actually yesterday for like all day working on stuff for the church, and I'd say kind of a bird's eye view of me is a pastor. I love coffee. I love drinking coffee. Probably that's an everyday thing. I'm a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. I love discipleship and just ministry in general, just being able to, the privilege of being able to speak into people's lives, the privilege of being able to communicate at times, and just, I think I've always had a passion and a compassion for people. And so ministry always just seemed like a natural bent for me. And so, I grew up my dad was a pastor, grandfather was a pastor, great grandfather was a pastor. So I'm like a fourth or fifth generation.
Lineage.
Yeah, definitely. So that's a little bit about me. I think Kansas City is a great place. I enjoy living here, and one of the things, like some of the things I love doing around KC, I love. I was at a Royals game just a couple days ago, so I love going to sports, exploring new areas, and so I think Kansas City is great, and it's a joy to live here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So coming from a lineage of pastors, I can see that in you because you're so good at what you do.
Thanks.
So you're like, I've been trained from birth.
Yeah. It's
and especially when you say like, oh, I have a compassion for people, and just a love for people. I see that in your everyday life. Every time I see you, you're always reaching out to everybody else, and such a positive attitude and a mode of service and giving. I don't think I've ever once seen you not in this, like, that smile running around, just like, oh, how you doing? What's going on? Like, just inviting and adding to the warmth, which I think Radiant does extremely well. But you're an excellent proponent of that.
Thanks.
Within there, with being from a long lineage of pastors and having a very good experience within that and examples. What are some things that would surprise people about pastoring? Yeah,
that's a great question. I think ministry has like a misconception, I think, a lot of times. I think it's kind of like you come on a Sunday and you see the pastor preach a message, and then you go home and it's like, man, that was a great message. And man, there can be like an allure to it. Like, man, it'd be awesome to like be able to preach and like communicate God's word, and but honestly, that's like a very small percentage of your time in ministry. And ministry isn't even about necessarily communicating. It's about serving the house of God and serving God's people. And so growing up as a pastor's kid, I saw kind of the back door of what ministry really is. And it's like my parents getting phone calls at like 2 a.m., someone's calling a church they need gas money, or, they, somebody died, or there's, a medical emergency, whatever it is. And so and then, evenings spent counseling people and just like trying to work through their lives. And so ministry is not glamorous in any way. And I think there's like the whole notion of like the celebrity pastor culture where it's like all these pastors that are on social media. Like, I think that is obviously there's a different conversation there, but I think ministry in general is like you have to really love people and you have to really love what you do. And if it's something that you enjoy, um, I think it's we had a message yesterday where Tim was talking about rejoicing always, and I think if it's something that you enjoy, even in the hard times, it's you can rejoice in it. And so I think it would be surprising to some people to know, like, okay, ministry isn't just like studying the Bible during the week and then preaching a message, but it's like um, it's just being with people and getting in the messy, nitty gritty with
Yeah.
people in people's lives, and um, dealing with all kinds of things during the week that you wouldn't necessarily know, just from the outside looking in. And I'm not saying that as like, it's like really hard and try to discourage people, but like ministry it's challenging in a lot of unique ways, and there's just a lot more that is below the surface than someone might, think just looking in.
Yeah. The surface level from the outside and
Yes.
the pews and the seat and the
Yeah.
chairs,
Yes.
right?
Totally.
Are like, oh yeah,
Well, especially
come up once a week and you
exactly, and especially if you're just coming, like you're there at church maybe 2-3 Sundays a week or a month, and you're only going to see a very limited perspective of what's actually happening. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I think that would be probably the most surprising thing. The other thing, as being a pastor and being a pastor's kid, is like there is like a heavy responsibility too, where it's like the Bible talks about that, where there's leaders and people that are in authority there's a weight to it, and you're held accountable for the way that you're leading people, and if you're pointing people towards Jesus or pushing them away from him, there's accountability there. And so that's always kind of in your head and in the back of your mind, like, man, there's a weight to this and a responsibility. And so it's not like a flippant thing where you're just like, oh, I can just you know that's the other thing. It's not like a career choice. Like, yeah, it's a career in a sense, but it's not like, oh, I'm just going to be a pastor. I feel like there's got to be like a deeper sense of calling there than just like, if you're just like, okay, I need to find something to make money and provide for myself and my family, then like ministry probably isn't a great idea. But if you feel like, man, this is what I feel like God has called me to do, ministry is a part of the way that God has created me, then I think you're on the right track.
What would you say to your younger self that was coming up and had that calling on their heart and was saying, okay, no, I know I'm called to be a pastor. I want to be a pastor. This is the direction I want to take my life in and how I want to serve God.
Yeah.
How would you direct the younger version of you, whether it be practically or prepping them emotionally or any of those things?
Yeah, I think I'd probably lean into to both. Like, I mean, on the practical side, like I would tell my younger self, like, get in God's word, read the Bible. I think that's something that is applicable for anyone in ministry, whether you're a pastor, whether you are just working at a church in a support role. I just think anybody that's in ministry, like, I think the baseline should be like, man, be somebody that like knows the Bible, and not in like a way where you have to prove anything, but just like get in the Bible, know God's word. So I would tell myself that. I'd say get in the Bible, know God's word, study it, and then I would say, like, also I'd probably tell myself, don't compare yourself to where you are versus where someone else is, because the path to being a pastor or to being in ministry can look vastly different depending on your context. I mean, there's the route of like going to seminary and then getting a job, whether it's at a church in a denomination or or there's just ways of like, you grew up at this church and you served, and then so there's a lot of different ways where kind of ministry comes about. But I feel like if you feel if you have that call, it's just about being obedient to where God has you. So I would just say, be obedient where you are, and then when these God opportunities arise, then walk through that door. And so be faithful. I spent years at a church. So I grew up in Colorado, spent years as a pastor's kid and just serving. And it was much like, when Radiant Church began, we were like portable and setting up, tearing down. I grew up doing that as a kid. Like I would be there in the morning at an elementary gym, unloading a trailer, setting up chairs, setting up sound equipment. So it's just being faithful where you're at and like not thinking that you're too good for something or that like you should be doing something else. It's like God's put you somewhere for a reason. It's like serve with a joyful heart, and then opportunities will come at some point. And when you feel like, okay, this is an invitation from the Lord to do this, then you walk through that door. So that's what I would tell myself, and that's been, a lot of my story over the years is just like being faithful and then trying to walk through the doors that I feel like God's opened when the time is right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there ever a point where you, let me take one step back on that.
Yeah.
Did you always feel like you had a calling to pastoring
from a young age? Like I can remember probably like from the time I was like 5 or 6, I felt like I would be a pastor or like I'd be in ministry someday. And part of that was probably just because that was what I'd seen modeled by my parents, by my grandparents, you know what I mean? And so I grew up as a church kid. I was in church a lot. We'd be there on Sundays, we'd be there midweek. And then we would, being a pastor's kid, if there was ever like guest ministry or like traveling preachers, like, they would spend time at our house and I would hear stories about how just things that God was doing around the country or around the world even. And so that gave me a broader perspective of just what God is doing in the world in general. And that was exciting to me. And so I always felt like, man, I feel like, I was going to be in ministry, going to be a pastor. So it's what I wanted as a young age. And I don't even know if it was like a sense of, like I never heard like an audible voice from God to like be a pastor or anything, but it's just like this, I don't know, this knowing in my heart, like I think that's what I'm going to do one day, and had that desire. So can remember that from a young age for sure.
Was there ever a point within there that you were fluctuating on that idea?
Not particularly. I think I probably wrestled with my faith the most when I was around 19, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I had graduated high school. I was in college trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with my life? And ministry wasn't something that it was like something that I knew I was going to do, but I didn't necessarily want to go to seminary and do the traditional route. So I looked at everything from being a nurse to doing real estate. I was working at restaurants and going to school and just trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do? And then I eventually started, I was like, okay, I'm going to take some classes. I started taking classes at Liberty Online which was with the idea of like, okay, maybe I'll be a pastor and I'll start taking some more like theological courses, and then one thing led to another, and that's what I ended up studying is and religious studies, and just saying, okay, I think I'm going to be a pastor, and this will be applicable to ministry one day. And so, but I did wrestle with it. For I think just adolescence, just trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do as I'm growing up? What am I going to do to provide for myself? And ministry wasn't like something like where, okay, I graduated high school and then I can step right into a ministry job. Yeah, it's like, okay, you got to figure out in the meantime, okay, I feel like I have this call. What am I going to do until then? So a lot of wrestling with that and figuring that out. But eventually, it all came together.
Throughout that journey, what has been, I should say, after 19, 20, and you're actually practicing to whatever level that is. What has been the most difficult thing for you throughout that?
I think probably just, it's funny, but like trusting that God is going to, that God's faithful, that he's going to provide, and just like not trying to accomplish everything on my own, and saying, okay, like, all right, God, this is where you have me. This is what you have me doing. it doesn't look exactly like I thought it was going to, but trusting that he is leading me and guiding
Mhm.
me. And so I think just trusting his plan. I think that's a common struggle for people, like for people even in the Bible, like whether it's uh, the children of Israel or whether it's people. I mean, Old Testament and New Testament is just trusting that okay, God has a plan, God's leading me, and I don't have to do everything on my own. I think that over the years, it's always been a struggle. Of like, am I doing the right thing? Am I where God wants me? And just knowing, okay, like it's not complicated. Am I doing what God told me to do? Am I loving Him? Am I serving Him in the way that He told me to? Yeah. And so, all right, then I know God. If He led me here, He's gonna provide for me. And so, just that general concept, I think, has been a struggle, um, a good struggle, because you really wrestle with things and come to a place. You either come to a place where you trust God or you don't.
Mhm.
And that's where I said, I was like, all right, God, Your way is best. You know what you're doing better than I do. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was there ever a specific scenario that was the number one thing that you were working on, where it was like, hey, this hit the fan, and I have to really, really flex this muscle right now?
I mean, definitely. So when when we moved, so I grew up in Colorado from the time I was about 4 or 5 years old, um, and then when I was 26, Gabby, myself, and then Eloise, our daughter, was 3 months old at the time. Um, we had prayed about moving to Kansas City to help start Radiant Church, and we did that, and a lot of prayer, and there was difficulty in that. I mean, not only just like financially, but like um, even like relationships, coming out here and saying goodbye to life in Colorado, and I still have family there, and so we visit there when we can. But it's just it was a struggle for sure. And then when we moved out here to Kansas City, it was hard because I remember we were in an apartment. We had like no money. I remember um, there was a guy at the church who like cut hair. Who he didn't do it professionally, but he cut hair, and like when I needed haircuts, I would like buy him Taco Bell, and he would come over to my house or to my apartment and cut my hair, and like that's all I could do. But we were really struggling, and then we had to break the lease on our apartment early because we couldn't afford it. We were at a place where I was like, I don't know what we're gonna do. We might have to move back to Colorado because we don't have any money.
Mhm.
Um, I was working at Starbucks part time, going to school. Gabby was working. I was taking care of Eloise at home when she was working, and she was taking care of Eloise when I was working, and then we were helping to start a church, and we were leading the youth ministry at the time at the church. And I just remember it was circumstances were hard, and it was just I really had to lean in and trust God. That okay, God, we felt like just an invitation to move out here, and we're trusting you, and that was hard. Um, and but God provided. I mean, there was a lot of just stories of God's provision, whether it's through people,
Mhm.
um, where that God provided, and we were able to get through that. But it was like it was hard. I had to trust and just say, okay, God, I'm trusting you, and just believing that you're in control and you're gonna see us through this. And it wasn't like I just didn't, I did nothing. I trusted God and then just
Took
did
action.
took action
Yeah.
exactly. And but that was hard. It was not easy.
What did that look like practically? Trusting God. Was it you're like, hey, I for you it was I had spent a lot of time in prayer. I spent a lot of time
Yeah,
in the Word. I mentorship. What did that look like?
yeah. It was all of those things. Praying, asking
Like
God.
I need
Yeah,
everything you got
yeah,
for me
yes.
right
It
now.
was like God. I mean, it was like times of like just by myself in my car. God, like need help. Like, can you provide? I need direction. So his prayer. Um, it was surrounding myself with community at like talking to people, asking questions, getting mentorship. It is practically just like okay, I'm gonna work hard. Um, I'm gonna try to find the right job. This job isn't working, or this so it's like the practical side, and then just like crying out to God in prayer, um, asking a lot of questions. I mean, having phone calls,
Yeah.
asking people for advice, um, and just navigating it the best that I knew how. And that was okay. Like God, I need your help, and then I'm gonna do. everything I can on my end to see us through. And God was faithful. And man, there's so many stories of just, I remember one time our car broke down.
Yeah.
And like we didn't have any money to fix it. And I was just like, man, God, I don't know what we're going to do, but like, Lord, I need something. Like I was at a loss, and we were going to a prayer meeting. It was actually before the church had even started. There was a prayer meeting at David and Renata's house. And so we were in our second car. And that's a whole other story, but we were in this, we got into the prayer meeting, and for whatever reason, we didn't, I don't think we told anybody that our car was broken down, but David was like, at the prayer meeting, he's like, we're going to take an offering today, and we're just going to give it to Paul and Gabby. And we were just like, oh, like, thank you, God. Like, and I think it was like $400 or something that that was like given just by like, and everyone else, it's not like anyone there was rich. Like everyone else had just moved their lives, but they'd given us, we got enough money to fix our car. And just like literally that day I've been praying, God, we need provision. We need something, and God provided it. And so, yeah, it was really cool.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're like, I need something, and then the guy was like, here's $400.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. And then literally we were able to replace our alternator, and someone at the church helped me do it. And it was crazy.
I can't even pay the mechanic to put it in.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I can buy the part and then try to replace it myself. And that's what we did.
Awesome. Well, obviously with you being a pastor, you do a lot of discipleship.
Yeah.
You do a lot of mentoring. And I'm going to touch back on that in a second. But on the other side of that, who is discipling you? Who is mentoring you? And what does that look like?
Yeah. So a few different ways. So obviously, like my pastor, David, so me and some the members of our staff, we have like a ongoing where we meet pretty regularly, and we talk about what's God doing in us. What do we feel like God's speaking to us lately? We talk about just what it looks like in our lives following Jesus, and what we're struggling with, what we're going through. So that's a huge part. I also have like a group of guys at the church that we meet with regularly, and we do the same thing. We just talk about where are you at, how are you doing, and that's a group of guys that are all older than me. I think I'm the youngest one in that group, which is great because you get perspectives of guys that have been through things that I haven't been through yet. But it's everything from like guys in their late 30s to guys like, in their 60s. And so that's been awesome because I think getting perspective and getting the viewpoints of people that have been through more life and experienced more things than you is vital.
Yeah.
Like it's at any age, you think it's almost like you think that you've seen a lot of life and that you're experienced, and then there's times where you realize, oh, actually I have a lot to learn, and there's a lot that I don't know. So that's been super valuable for me. I mean, I've got a lot of friends, kind of a lot of long distance friends too, that it's like both ways. We mentor each other in some ways. So that's been super awesome to have just friends that are, some that are in ministry, and just be able to like share text messages with or phone calls with. But I think definitely having guys here locally, especially guys in the church that I can meet with regularly, has been huge help. And then there's guys that I meet with where I'm mentoring, and sometimes it's just like I have regular meetings with people, like we'll get coffee every so often, and then there's always just like one-offs too, where it's just like, hey, like take someone out, let me hear how are you doing, what are you struggling with, what's going on in your life. And so and then obviously there's been seasons where I've had like small groups, like I think a recent one that Gabby and I had, we had a few different couples over to our house regularly, where we just talked about like our marriages. And there's a lot of like young couples, like couples that had just gotten married or had been married for a couple of years, talking about communication and just the challenges of marriage, the ups, the downs. And so, I think it's always evolving, just depending on like what life looks like. But I think it's just important to have regular scheduled time with people that can mentor you.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna like pick one or the other, like okay, like pick someone that can mentor you, um, and but then use that to be able to like minister to somebody, and help mentor someone. I think sometimes we think, okay, I have to be in a certain place to help
Yeah.
disciple someone or help mentor someone. But I think it's just about like, and everybody's at a different place on their journey and following Jesus, and we're all called to encourage, and that's why we gather as the church. We're the big reason is to worship God and to encourage one another, and so we can all always be doing that, and that's part of what this is, right? It's like
Absolutely.
it's encouraging one another. So yeah.
Yeah, and I've noticed that exact thing too. When you have that being led by those older and more experienced, and
Mhm.
also leading those younger than you, um, and by not even through the like, oh, I'm going to sit down, we're gonna have one-on-one and I'm teaching you, but through that passive, just spending time together,
Yep.
and you're learning through that. You're like, oh, okay, I see how they did that. Oh, okay, I understand.
Yep.
And I had an experience with that last Saturday when we have some people from our youth moving into the young adults.
Yep.
And they just graduated, they just turned 18, and they're
Yep.
coming into our community.
Yep.
And so we are having a young adults guys night, and we were out, and the guys night really just divulged into like we had two separate groups of Bible study and going back and forth.
That's awesome.
But one of the we invited one of the guys that is just now transitioning over.
Yep.
And me and another buddy were going back and forth on just some theology stuff, not arguing, but like exploring an idea and going like, well, what about this? Well, what about here? That thing.
Totally.
You're familiar.
Yes. Yes.
And he was there just listening the entire time. And
just taking it in. Yeah.
And I wanted to include him. I'm a big inclusion guy. And I was bringing it in. I was like, what do you think? He's like, I don't know. I'm just listening.
Yeah.
And when we kind of broke our little group, he came to me and was like, wow, you guys have so much wisdom, and there's just so much to absorb. And I was like, wisdom? I was like, I'm a dummy. What do you mean? It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. You're like,
we were just exploring this.
Yeah.
But I noticed in that moment, I was like, oh, he's just passively watching. And I do the same thing too. And I go into groups with people like yourself, and we just sit down and listen. And what I said after that to him, I was like, oh yeah. I was like, no, don't worry. We do the same exact thing too. Because when you go in a group of other people that are further along to you, you sit down and you shut up.
Yes, you just listen. Yes. And that's a big part of it. It's just like, okay, what can I glean from this group of people, especially when people are older than you. I think it's just like good to just like listen. And then like when the time is right, you can like interject. One rule of thumb I always try to like follow is like, I never try to take up a larger amount of time than I should in a conversation. So like if I'm talking to one person, I'm trying to talk about 50% of the time, or I'll let them talk more. Like, you know what I mean? I'm never trying to talk more that like be the one to talk 80% of the time, 90% of the time. I'm always trying to keep that. Or if like I'm in a group of 4 people, trying to talk about 25% of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that's a general rule, and there's going to be times where you're talking the most or you're not talking at all. But especially with like older people or people that are like have wisdom. I mean, there's been times I've been like with ministers or pastors that are just like so much more experienced than I am. They've seen so much, and I'm like, I'm just gonna like not talk and just listen, and I'm just grateful to be in the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think
really
that's important.
Depends on the context.
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
It's like, am I here to teach, or am I here to absorb?
Yep.
Whether you're the leader or the one being led.
Exactly.
In those either moments because if you're the one being led, you're like, sometimes it's a time to like, hey, this is what I'm going through. And then you know, like when we've had coffee.
Yes.
I think most of those times I use those as
right.
I'm talking.
It's like, go for it. Yes. Right. It's like, dude, just tell me like what's going on in your life. I mean, it's the same way where if I'm like, there's the inverse of that too. If I'm like leading a group of like high school guys or middle school guys, and like I'm trying to get them to talk, but they don't want to talk, and so like I'm just gonna talk by default because I'm like, okay, they're not getting there, so I'm trying to like get them to say something. But yeah, exactly, it's all about context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we talked about who has been mentoring you.
Yeah.
Who are you actively mentoring or discipling? Is that a focus group where you're like, I'm this generation, I'm this age group, or someone specific that you want to talk about?
I think I've got a handful of guys that I meet with pretty regularly, mentorship wise. at the church. Um, I think a big focus for me, young adults and teenagers have always been, I mean, just people in that age range, whether it's at youth group or young adults, has always been like, man, I feel for that age group, whether you're a teenager or a young adult, because um, I know what it's like being in that phase of life, and um, I have just a compassion for, man, like teenage guys that are just trying to figure out their life and trying to follow Jesus, and same with young adults. So I think young adults, teenagers is definitely a big
Yeah.
passion point for me. Um, I think other people in ministry, I feel for um, people that are just kind of in the thick of, like, whether it's young couples that are, you know, pastors, but I think you kind of have to look at your life and be like, who's God put in front of me? Because we're all called to be disciples of Jesus, right? Like, to know Him, and then we're called to make disciples. That's what Jesus said at the Great Commission. He told His disciples, "Go and make disciples of all nations." And so that's what we're doing. And so you just kind of have to look at, like, okay, who's God put in my life? Who's needed right now, and who's like, who's my heart kind of, do I feel a tug towards somebody? You know what I mean? So, like, that's what it's been like for me with, like, some young adults and teenagers and others. But so I think you just kind of have to take stock of, like, okay, is there someone, like, if you're not discipling or mentoring anyone, is there someone in my life that I could? Or sometimes people will approach you, and, like, sometimes it's right where it's like, okay, yeah, let's try to meet on a regular basis, and sometimes it might not be, but just being aware, who has God put in my life, who can I mentor, who can I disciple, and then just being obedient to do it.
Looking at those the up and comings,
Yeah.
the teenagers, the young adults, right?
Yep.
What would you say is the number one focus that you feel like you're coming up in repetition a lot, that we're struggling with or need help on?
Ah, man, I think probably more of an ambiguous thing. It's almost like they're often just trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with my life? Like, because you're kind of faced with, in that stage of life, you're faced with, like, okay, do I do I do, like, school? Do I do, like, trade school? Do I do college? Do I do just military? Do I do a gap year? Do I do just go straight into work? I think all of that is happening, and then you're navigating, like, you also have, like, this growing desire of, like, I want to get married. I want to find a partner. You know what I mean? And so I think uh, relationships aside, relationships are always a big thing that we're coming up with. Like, okay, man, how do I find the right person? I'm navigating this relationship struggle. That's a big part. And then I think it's also just, like, figuring out, like, direction for my life. Like, what do I do? And sometimes I think there's this misconception of, like, I have to, like, find this divine path of, like, this singular divine path of, like, I did this and then I did this, and that's God's will for me. When I think it's a lot more broad than that. It's just like, it's less of, like, a small path that you got to find through the woods, and it's more of, like, a direction, like, go north, like, you know what I mean, like, and that's more of what I feel like God's will and direction for your life is. It's less of, like, a binary this or that, and more of, like, a general, like, okay, this is what I called you to do, and all these little decisions, as long as you're moving in the right direction, aren't as consequential as just moving that in that way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think God's direction and direction for your life personally is a big thing I run into with teenagers, young adults, and then relationship issues. Like, I mean, I want to find a wife, or I want to find a husband, all those things. It's like, that's a big part of that part of your life too, is that you're just trying to figure out all that. And so those are two big things that I see a lot in that age group.
On the looking for direction in life, what's the main thing that you feel like you're saying the most that would be helpful for someone that is looking for that and is asking that question right now?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to be doing? Where am I supposed to be going? and really stuck on those supposed to.
Well, a lot of what I was talking about earlier is like, okay, um, do what God has put in front of you. Be faithful to where God has you at right now, and then just be open and ready and available for opportunities that come up. So like, okay, you feel like you've had a desire to play music or something. Okay, like how can you be practicing that right now? I don't have any shows lined up, but no one wants to book me or whatever. It's like, okay, are you practicing? Okay, just be practicing. Have you tried to play on the worship team at church? Like, have you put yourself out there? Have you auditioned? I think it's just about like, okay, I knowing you have this call or this invitation from God, and so what can I do right now? And I think you see that modeled in like the life of David in the Old Testament, where it's like he was anointed to become king, right? Like when he was a shepherd boy, but it was years and years until he actually became king. And it's like, what was he doing in the meantime? Like, it's like, well, he was preparing. Like, he was being faithful to being a shepherd and to watching the flock and to practicing with his weapons and killing lions and bears and those types of things. And so I think it's just, all right, God, you've put me here. I'm going to be faithful and I'm going to do things well where I'm at, and then I'm going to be available for what comes next, and and walk through those doors when they're available.
I like that example of David.
Yeah,
and I've definitely heard it before, but it's really good to hear again.
Yes,
and process it, because he's one of those like titular characters within the Bible that so many use as an example.
Totally.
And that act of doing, I think, is the biggest thing, at least within Gen Z, Gen A, which I'm very familiar with. Is we have an issue with patience.
Sure.
And also we
all do.
We're all in, and we're very inundated with distraction.
100%.
And that takes up the time and experience that is needed to put into those things to be able to get to where you need to go.
Yep.
And that's a really big part of like my passion and heart, is in that encouragement of putting away the distractions.
Yeah.
And leaning in and just doing.
Yep.
And you'd be surprised of two things. One, how much work and how much time you actually have to put in to get to that outcome. And within that, how long it takes. And then number two, on the inverse, how fast it happens.
Yeah, right.
It goes from, I put in so much, and
0
I got
to
nothing
100.
out of it. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And then for months, years, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, right there. And you're like, I just went from doing one a day to now I just did 200 of whatever metric I'm making up, right?
Right.
But because it's just an upfront investment.
Yes, and consistency. And there is no such thing as like, you see like these overnight success stories where it's like, oh, like whether it's a singer, whether it's someone that got famous, it's like there's always behind the scenes, there's like a consistency and like the unseen, and then like then it paid off in a sense. It's so true. It's just like that consistent work, and then when you see it spike, it's because of all the work that was put in earlier. Yeah.
I come from the martial arts world, is where I learned
a
lot of those things. And so a lot of the sayings, my understandings are within that.
Yep.
But I believe it was Bruce Lee. I might be mixing him up with somebody else, but I'm 90% sure it's him. But he goes, fear not the man that practices 1,000 kicks, but the man that practices the same kick 1,000 times.
Yeah, right.
And it's that consistent, constant work.
Yep.
And
repetition,
I experienced that practically.
Yeah. Yes.
How many times you just stood there at the bag, hitting the bag, the same strikes for an hour and a half, and then you go, okay, cool. Get rest, get some water. Now I'm going to do the other arm. Okay, it's just grueling.
Just being consistent and having repetition, 100%. And that's true in any format, in any context.
Any
I mean, whether it's music, like with, like you're a drummer and you're doing the same, you're doing your paradiddles over and over and over and over, or martial arts, or MMA, you're doing the same strikes. It's true in anything. It's true in communication. It's like you're rehearsing what you're going to say, you're refining it, you're working on it again and again and again. It's the same thing.
Yeah. What I found is there's a difference between what's true and what's truth.
Yeah.
And the key delineator is that truth is consistent across time.
Yep.
Versus true, I'm wearing a white shirt today. That's true.
Right.
So that's not be consistent.
It's not true tomorrow necessarily. Yeah.
But truths are consistent across time and across topic.
Yeah.
Right. And so that consistency and that commitment.
Yeah. There's principles of truth that are just going to be consistent regardless. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
So you said there's two main things that you heard from when you're mentoring people. The first one on direction in life.
Yep.
And the second one primarily on relationships.
Yep.
Now, I'm not asking person. I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. Of course.
Not on me, right? For a friend.
Of course.
What are some of the main things that you're hearing and that you're leading people towards, and that advice that you're giving?
I think a big thing is just like, how do I know? Yeah, for a friend, how do I know if this person is like a good fit, or like this is the right person for me, in a sense. Now, I don't think that there's like a singular person that everyone is like destined to be with. The only time in the Bible, to my knowledge, that God ever told someone to marry someone was Hosea, and where God told Hosea to marry a prostitute, Gomer. And that whole story in Hosea is just about like God's faithfulness to Israel, even though Israel was not faithful to God. And then Hosea experienced that with his wife Gomer not being faithful to him. Yeah. I don't think, and maybe I'll be corrected on this, but I don't think there's any other time in the Bible that God like is telling somebody to marry someone, right? So I think essentially sometimes people get a perception of like, man, I got to find the right person, and you have to find the right person in a sense, but not like
broader.
Yes, it's more of like a broad. You're trying to find the right type of person. And first of all, I think that looks like, does this person, do they match with my values? Like, do they love Jesus? Are they serving God? Are they, I think that should be, for anyone that's a Christian, anyone that's a believer, that should be like the
step one.
Yes, exactly. That is like the baseline. Like that has to be there, because if that's not there, there's going to be a lot of things that don't work, and there has to be that commonality there. So you want to find somebody that is going to be a strength to you, going to be a partner, going to help you, and that you can serve God with together, for sure. I think there's two things. I think you're looking for the right person, and then you need to work on being the right person. So looking for the right person looks like, okay, what kind of person is this? Now, obviously there's going to be, you're going to have a physical attraction to that person. That is a very small part. It's necessary. That needs to be there. But is this person, what are some of the patterns in their life? What type of person are they? How do they treat people? How do they talk? Do I have fun? Do I enjoy them? Do I enjoy being around them? I don't think you ever want to be in a place where you're trying to convince yourself of somebody like, oh man, this person, like they seem like they should be so good, and they do this, they do that, but you're trying to convince yourself. If that's where you find yourself, I don't think that's a good, like it wouldn't be a good decision to continue to pursue a relationship with someone like that if you're having to convince yourself. So I think you're looking for patterns, you're looking for the type of person they are, and then. But I think most of it is just working on being the right person, working on yourself, working on like, okay, am I the type of person that my eventual partner is going to want to be with, So, and I think sometimes people get wrapped up in like, trying to find the right person, and that they kind of miss. It's like there's this sense of like, oh, I'm gonna find this person, and they get caught up in this like carousel of looking for people. So I think sometimes there's two extremes where it's like, okay, I'm not gonna pursue anybody, and I'm gonna wait. And then there's the inverse of that, where it's like, I'm gonna just date everybody and try to find this person. I think it's a little bit more balanced, where you're not necessarily like going after everybody. But you're aware, and then like when you find somebody that you've like, I want to pursue this person, you do it. You're going to take action. So I think it's looking for the right person, looking for the right qualities, and then working on yourself, being the right being the right kind of
Mhm.
person. And
Yeah.
then when you find someone that matches up, okay, don't be shy, don't be timid, don't sit on your hands, but like pursue. And if you get to that next step and the next step, that's great. But if it doesn't work out, okay,
Yeah.
I'll wait.
So then I want to talk about two topics within that relationship: the pre-period, pre-committal, and then
Yeah,
during
yeah,
committal. Meaning like you're actively dating. You're like,
sure,
okay, yeah,
yes,
whatever labels you put on it,
yep,
you're at that point. But focusing on the pre part,
yeah,
and you said that you have those two extremes,
yes,
and wanting to play down the middle.
yep,
What does that look like practically? When
yeah. I think it practically it looks like you should probably just be around. So like you're a guy, you should probably be around like group settings. Um, you're just kind of like, okay, you don't want to be isolated just by yourself. You want to be around. So like come to church, go to your young adult meeting, go to small groups,
yeah,
be around people that like other women that might be around your age, be the type of person that you might want to marry one day. Um, I think I would stray away from like too many one-on-one dates in the early stages
Mhm.
because um,
When you say too many in early stages, what does it mean?
yeah, like don't be the type of guy that's like, okay, I've gone to a small group and there's five girls in it, and a month in I've gone on a date with every single one of them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like, okay, that might be a little bit too extreme. But just be around the opposite sex, and then you know, be observant, but I think it's great to just hang out in group settings. Like,
Mhm.
and I think you and a lot of your friends do this great where it's like you're in group settings, you guys are hanging out in groups, because then you can kind of get a sense of like who people are and dynamics without um, creating like a weird dynamic. Like, oh, we went on
Yeah.
a date and it's okay. Like if you go on a date or two and like it doesn't work out, like there's not chemistry there, you
Mhm.
don't think it's going to work, that's great. You haven't created anything weird as long as you're not like going too far with it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's okay to like, hey, I might be interested in this person. I'm gonna like take them out and
Mhm.
get coffee, and if nothing comes of it, that's great. All
Yeah,
you did is went out and got coffee. It's
absolutely.
not like went to the deep end and you guys got physical and then now there's this weird
Mhm.
dynamic.
Absolutely.
So I think it's all about just like um, being around people like, and I mean that's why like whether it's a small group, whether it's
Mhm.
something at church, you kind of are able to be exposed to like a bunch of different people, and then you can kind of like zero in. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm interested in this person. I'm attracted to this person. I love the way that they love Jesus, and they're really kind, and I want to like get to know them a little bit more. So you can kind of go from there. You know what I mean?
You touched on the one extreme of overdoing,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Now on the extreme of underdoing,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
does it look like when, or let me rephrase that. What would be your advice
Yeah.
when talking to someone who is just taking that step back and
Yes.
not reaching out
I
and
see.
not giving that chance of like
I see it a
exploring?
lot in young adults where it's like, especially guys, I feel like, and where they almost get like, um, they like this girl, and but they're just paralyzed. That like they don't do anything. I think it's just a matter of like, if you if you are in a place where you like someone, you want to get to know them more, you just need to default to taking a step.
Mhm.
So, okay, maybe that looks like you're gonna ask them to hang out with a group of friends. Maybe that looks like asking, like, hey, like, would you want to get coffee sometime? Like asking, something really casual.
Yeah.
Maybe it looks like making your intentions known to them, like, hey, I really enjoy spending time with you. I'd like to get to know you more,
Mhm.
and giving that option to the other person, like to that girl, to see like, hey, is it reciprocated? Or are they gonna
Yeah.
push away? I think it's all about taking some sort of action step and some sort of
Mhm.
step towards it, and just saying like, okay, this is what I want. I'm gonna take a step towards it, and not just like think being in a place where it's like, well, if it works out, it'll work out. And, I'm just gonna kind of wait.
Mm-hmm.
I think inaction is the wrong choice when it comes to trying to find a spouse.
When you said you primarily see that among young adults or more among the teenage side?
More,
With guys.
yeah.
Because I know you work primarily with the guys. So
primarily, I would
both
say
sides.
That's a great question. Probably, I've seen it mostly with young adults, but I feel like Gen Z is a little, Gen Z and Gen A are probably a little bit more action oriented in my view than like my generation was. I feel like there was just a lot of guys in my generation that was like, it just felt like in the church world, a lot of guys were just, there would be a lot of inaction there, and just, man, like there's this person right in front of you, and you're not taking a step, and everybody can see it. Like,
absolutely,
you know what I mean? So I feel like Gen Z and Gen A are a little bit more forward and intentional, but I think every generation struggles with it.
Yeah, to an extent, every generation does. And I asked that question because I'd be remiss if I didn't push back.
Yes.
On that
yes.
topic. Being in there, and I know when
yep.
my friends watch it, they're like, I can't believe you let that slide. Can't believe you didn't say something. So I have to.
There's two sides to every coin.
For sure. Being in the midst of that, I've seen just the gender difference within that.
Yeah.
I feel like has really swapped. I don't know so much about teenage age, but the copious amount of young adults data inputs I've had here, it's been the other side of not hyperactive, but high action oriented
from like the male side.
From the male side.
Yeah.
And
I could see that.
Exact opposite.
I could totally see that. I could totally see that. Yeah, and I can't speak to the female dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely not.
But I can say this. I can say you do have to put yourself out there to a certain degree, and you can only control so much, right? So I think take what you can control and take what you can do, and then you just kind of have to let it. Okay, she responded, she didn't respond, whatever. But don't let the fear of rejection or the fear of past experience keep you from like taking action again. You know what I mean?
And I totally agree. And I definitely wasn't looking for like a, hey, tell me about the other side. That's not what I was looking for. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yes.
You know, because exactly what you said, the conversations that I've had with everybody else is also coming from a little bit more of a worldly place.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Being the high rep guy type of deal. Where like, hey, don't take it personally.
Right.
It's a big difference in, I guess, the people that have like grown up in the Christian world. It's that timidness is in there.
Yes.
If they say no, then my world's over and
Yes.
Versus, I guess, you know, me and some of the other people
Yeah.
that are in my age range that have come from a little more worldly high rep experience.
Yes.
Go like,
totally different type of experience.
Just like, oh, got it, cool.
Yeah.
No worries. Try again. But like do that action step.
Oh, another part of it, I think that keeps people maybe from action, like in the church world, is like the social aspect of like everybody's friends, everybody knows each other. So if you did get, if you were like putting yourself out there and you got rejected or it didn't work out, everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
And so then there's that fear of like, man, what's everyone going to think of me if this happens? I think that's another big part of it too. But yeah, I do think it's just about like, you know,
I was gonna say, if you have a healthy friend group, right?
Right.
Like the group here at Radiant, the Young Adults group, is hyper co-ed. We're about 50-50.
Yeah. Yep.
And we do everything together. We rarely ever segregate.
Yep.
Maybe every other week or maybe once a month we'll
Yep.
do like guys' night, and they'll do like a girls' thing.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's just but it's unplanned.
Right.
But 98% of the things are co-ed.
Yes.
And we have absolutely had intermingling of this person did this to varying different degrees.
Yep.
And everybody's very supportive.
Yeah.
Everybody's like super encouraging. We want these things to go. And when they haven't happened, or when people have been, whether it ended in the middle or at the very beginning, it never started. Nobody, I don't want to say nobody cares, but
it's not a huge deal. Yeah. You're not like
cutting into you. It's not a deal.
Yes.
We get up and move forward because we understand.
Yeah. These things are going to happen.
It's going to happen. That's natural.
So we're all figuring
deep breath.
it out.
It's going to be okay.
Exactly. Yes, that's so
Just
good.
go and
That's
Worst
so
case,
good.
you'll die, and if you die,
Yeah, right.
it's not your problem anymore. So you're good.
That's right. You're with the Lord. Come on. Yeah, yeah. That's so real. That's good, and that's great that you have a community where you feel like you can do that and you can make mistakes, and you're still going to be accepted and not face rejection and judgment. That's huge.
Absolutely. And it's coming from the guy that's been shot down twice. So
Come on.
I'm
proud of you.
I'm speaking of the choir, and everybody knows, and nobody cares.
Yeah, come on.
Okay.
That's
now
right.
everybody really knows. It's even more of an issue.
No names. No names.
No names. But if you know, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Fine. That's right. Come on. That's good, man. I'm proud of you for putting yourself out there.
Yeah. No, but this is great, Paul. Anything else you want to bring up, talk over?
Man, no, I'm thank you for hosting. I feel like this is great. Good to have a conversation. Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here.
Great.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was super fun.
Yes.
This will be one of the first podcasts that goes up.
Let's go. Come on.
I think you'll be actually number one. There's going to be an episode 0, so you'll be number 1 on there.
Dude.
So
honored.
that'll be awesome. And then where can people find you? Social links?
Yeah. I'm not crazy active on social, but you can probably mostly find me on Instagram, PD Barker, at PD Barker.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
And then, of course, if you want to come listen to a pastor, Radiant Church, right
yep,
here.
Come on, yes.
And but yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Salt of the Earth podcast. I'm super grateful to have the opportunity, and hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. See you guys.
Dude, thank you. Let's go. That was great.
That was so much fun.
Come on. That was awesome.